In this lesson, we'll learn how to organize our artwork using layers. Okay, so in the previous lesson, we learned how to organize our artwork using what's known as a group. We also learned how to nest groups inside other groups and manage our groups using what's known as isolation mode. Now, as you begin working with large amounts of artwork, another really great way to organize this artwork is using layers. As a matter of fact, everything we create in Illustrator is created using layers. And before we actually get into grouping with layers, we need to understand how Illustrator creates our objects. So let's go ahead and open our layers panel first. It's over here on the right in our layer dock, and it looks something like this. Let me go ahead and show you that if you don't have it open, you can come to Window and choose Layers. And let me go ahead and pull this out and away so we can explore this window and understand what we're looking at here. Now, there's four basic columns here within this layer preview area. Now, we have the visibility column right here. Notice there's a little eyeball there. We can actually control the visibility of a layer just simply by clicking on the eyeball to hide the layer. Now, everything on our document has been created in this one layer, so we just hid everything. Let me bring it back here by clicking again. The next column over is the edit column. This actually allows us to lock a layer for editing. Now, if we go ahead and click in that column, you'll notice a padlock appears within that little field there. And if we mouse over anything in our layer, we have a little icon that looks like a pencil with a line through it, indicating we can't modify objects there. To the right of that, we have a little color swatch, which is blue. We're actually going to talk more about that here in just a moment when we look at layer options. That's the color that's assigned to this layer. I'm going to go ahead and unlock this layer. Now, over here we have our layer name, and there's a preview thumbnail next to it. Now, we know that there's artwork on this layer for because of two reasons. There is a little arrow next to this indicating we can twirl this down and look at the contents of this layer, and there's also a thumbnail here that has sort of a preview of what's on that layer on the thumbnail. So if we continue moving to the right here, we have our targeting column. It looks like a little empty circle. Now, this is going to allow us to target a layer for effects and editing attributes. We'll talk more about this in just a little while when we talk about the appearance panel and applying appearance attributes. So if we look immediately to the right of the little circle, there's one other column, and this is our selection column. This is what's going to tell us if we have artwork selected on that layer or not. So I'm going to go ahead and twirl this little arrow down at this point and show you everything that is sitting inside this layer. And what you're going to quickly realize is that your layers can get very large and very difficult to navigate really quickly. So if you look here, we have a sublayer within this layer for every vector object that we've drawn, whether it's a path, whether it's a group of paths. All of these vector objects have their own sublayer here. So you can scroll through here, you can see there is a ton of stuff. Now, if navigating this layers window with all these individual sublayers in it is sort of difficult, I'm going to show you how to hide these here in just a moment. But let's take a look at some of these buttons here down along the bottom. We have a button here that's going to allow us to make or release a clipping mask for a layer. That's something new we haven't talked about yet, and we're actually going to have a whole lesson on masks here in just a little bit. But if we move over to the right, this is going to allow us to create a new sublayer within a layer. And if we move further to the right, we can create a new primary layer. This little button right here is going to allow us to trash a layer. So we've got some layer management buttons down here at the bottom. Let me just twirl this layer shut here. And let's go ahead and double click on this layer here really fast, and we're going to look at the layer options. Now, we can name this layer here by typing in the name, and we can also assign a color to this layer, either by dropping down this little menu here and choosing a color, or we can pick a custom color by double clicking on that color swatch and choosing it from this color picker here. Let me go ahead and close that out, and we've got some check boxes here. We've got one for template. Now, creating a template layer is actually a pretty common workflow when you're bringing in maybe a pencil sketch that you're planning on building in Illustrator. When you create a template layer, let me go and check that. Notice that all these options disappear except for this one, and it becomes checked for dimming images to 50%. This is going to allow you to dim a layer with your raster artwork on it to 50% so it doesn't intrude too much as you're tracing that artwork with your vector tools. So let me go and uncheck that here. We have a lock option here, which is the exact same as clicking lock in the edit menu, or excuse me, the edit column. We have a show check mark here, which is the exact same as hiding our layer in the visibility column. Then we have a print check mark. Now this is what makes this particular layer available for print. So if this is unchecked, you're not going to be able to print what's on this layer. Now the preview option here is actually going to work a lot like outline mode. I'm not sure if you remember when we looked at outline mode or not. Let me just go ahead and uncheck preview here so you can see what that looks like. We're going to essentially see outlines of all our vector objects here. So let me come in and double click and turn preview back on for that layer and hit OK. I'm just going to walk through creating a new layer here for you. We can either hit this button right here to create a new layer, or we can come up to our panel options here with this little flyout menu, and we can also select new layer. Now let me go ahead and do that here, and let's just go ahead and leave it called layer 7 for right now. And now creating a layer is pretty simple. It's just either this button or that option I just showed you. We can actually duplicate a layer as well simply by coming down here and dragging it to our new layer button. You can see here we created a layer 7 copy. Let me go ahead and delete that here. We can either do that here with the trash can, or we can come up here and choose delete layer. We also have a duplicate layer option here as well. Let's go ahead and just delete that layer. Now we can also reorder our layers really easily. All we have to do is reach up and grab our layer and drag it, and you can see here that we can receive some little help guides. We can drag it into this layer, or we can drag it below this layer, just like so. So organizing your layers is going to really be fairly simple just by dragging and dropping. Now, I don't know if you saw this or not, but on this flyout menu, we can actually enter into isolation mode for a layer. Now, we talked about ways to do that in the previous lesson on objects, but not layers. Right here, there's an inner isolation mode for a layer. And if we go ahead and click that, it's going to bring our gray isolation mode bar up, and we're just going to have one icon for our layer. So let's go ahead and back out of that. All right. Now let's just say we wanted to create a new layer, but we want to immediately look at the layer options, so we can maybe tweak some of those. Let's just go ahead and hold down our Alt key and click on this new layer button. You can see that immediately we're presented with that layer options that we looked at just a few minutes ago, and we can change those however we need to and hit OK to create a new layer. So just another little quick shortcut there for working with layers. Now I tell you what, let me just go ahead and show you how I would organize this file if I were building this on my own. Now I know we have different artboards here that we're using. We have one for the letterhead, a couple for business cards, and one for envelope. But not only do I like to separate my artwork based on artboard, I also like to create layers to help me organize that artwork. So I can show them, I can hide them, however I want to. So I'm going to go ahead and create some layers here. Let's go ahead and call this layer that we've been working on, let's go ahead and call this layer letterhead. Let's go ahead and make this new layer business card front. And let's go ahead and make a couple more layers here. Let's call this one business card back. And then our fourth layer we'll call envelope. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you how easy it is to just move artwork from one layer onto another layer. There's a couple different ways we can do that. Let me come over here and let's see. We've got our envelope layer. Let me just get this layer panel slid out of the way here. And let's go ahead and just draw a marquee selection around all of the artwork that's on our envelope here. Now, notice that when I did that, there's a little blue square that comes up next to our layer for letterhead. Now we could actually drill down here and find that artwork here in this layer stack, and you can see that each piece of that artwork we have selected is going to have a bigger blue square next to it. So we could actually come back up here to our primary layer and just grab that little blue square now that we have that artwork selected and drag it down to our envelope layer. And notice here that it changed colors. It changed to a black color. That's because this layer color is set to black. I typically don't like to set my layer colors to black, but that's okay for right now. So that's one method of moving artwork from one layer to another. Let's go ahead and move the artwork on the business cards to their appropriate layers. So I'll just come in here and select all the artwork on the front of our business card. And I want to come over here and select Business Card Front. Another way to move this artwork is just to come up to Object and choose Arrange, and then Send a Current Layer. It does the exact same thing as dragging the selection indicator to the new layer. So whatever's easiest for you, I tend to just drag the selection indicator because it saves me the time of going up to the drop down menus. Let me just come over here and move this last bit of artwork to its appropriate layer. And we now have all of our artwork separated onto layers that look sort of like the artboards we're using. We have one layer for each artboard. Now, working with layers is something that's going to take a little bit of practice to get used to, so I'd recommend going into the project files for this course, looking for this 32 start file, and try organizing this artwork onto new layers like I just did. Practice that a few times, come back, and in the next lesson we're going to talk about reshaping objects.